is Tom Devore. He was previously the Republican candidate for the Attorney General. As many of you know, he helped us get our children out of mass, which was amazing, and all of us are grateful for that. And now he's upholding the Second Amendment for us. So with much gratitude for taking on this new fight to protect our Second Amendment rights, I'd like to welcome Tom Devore.
I can say it. Huh? I give you a thanks, buddy. Flip this thing. Use that. Hello, everybody. This is a nice crowd. Dean says this is the biggest crowd that you guys have had. How long have you been doing this? 3 years. Kind of about the time that the Rona came to our shores. Yeah, amazing. Amazing. It was a novel coronavirus, though, right? It was novel. Never had infectious diseases in the history of mankind until the novel coronavirus came to us from China. Right? That is amazing. I was thinking about smallpox back in the early 1900s. Killed 40% of the people that contracted it, most of them younger. Guess that wasn't novel. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'll talk about the gun stuff here in a little bit, but there's a bigger issue to talk about that I think overlaps the gun issue. And that's just, where are we at in general as a civilization? It's the bigger question. Today we're talking about guns. 2 years ago we were talking about masks. Before that we were talking about the meltdown of the banking system. Y'all remember that, right? I mean, before that, there's always something, right? There's always something. How many of you in this room, prior to, let's use 2020, when the Rona hit our shores, how many of you came to events like this in the spring of a non-election year? How many of you came? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Less than 10. Thank you for being honest. Because that's the conversation to be having, that you should be having. When I'm done talking, if I haven't offended a few of you, then I haven't done what I'm supposed to do. And I'm serious about that. I'm not trying to offend anyone. It's not my nature. But it should be offensive. Because everything that ails what we can talk about, gun laws, mass laws, you know where the buck stops? With you. You. Don't look to your representative, whoever they might be. Don't look to your neighbor. I have heard thousands of times in the last 3 years, who's going to take care of that? Somebody needs to do something. Right? Who is that person? Who is it? Because if you're waiting for another Abraham Lincoln or Ronald Reagan or whatever's politics suits you, Barack Obama, Robert F. Kennedy, if you're waiting for them to come and save you, you're going to be waiting a long time, because it's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. This country is the greatest country that has ever existed in humanity. Why? What distinguishes us from the rest of the world and the rest of mankind since we walked this earth and God put us here? What makes us different? Can anybody tell me? Okay. Yeah, I know a little bit. I put long sleeves on. I did it for my lovely friend sitting over here. If I rolled my sleeves up, you'd probably see that word. Freedom. Why do we have it? Why? Okay, weapons, you can say that. The Declaration of Independence. Does it start off by saying, we the elected leaders of the United States of America? Does it say that? What does it say? We the people. I might have that right here. That is the only thing that makes us different from everybody else. We the people. We are in control, and people have forgotten that. You look to government. What's government going to do? Well, they got to take care of this. They got to fix this. That is going to be the ruination of our civilization if we don't get back to the foundational principles that created the birth of this nation. Do you think there weren't complacent people in the 1700s? There were. Do you think there weren't people that thought it was a really bad idea to tell those good people overseas to go take a fly and you know what? You think there were people that thought that was probably not wise? There were a lot of people that thought that wasn't wise. But you know what? They did it. And that courage that it took to give life to this nation is the only thing that will save it. Coming to these events is great, you guys. But as I asked you before, how many of you are here before 2020? And you honestly said, not many. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're here now. That's great. Because if you're not going to get in it in any capacity that you can with whatever talents that God has given you, it's not going to work. Politicians, there may be some here, and I'm not being disrespectful, you're not going to fix a damn thing. You're not. And that's not a criticism. You could put a whole legislature in Illinois of Republicans. They'll screw it up too. They will, I promise you. Because government leaders are no better than the people who elect them and participate in government. You guys, you know what? I grew up in a trailer park. My mama was on welfare. My dad was an alcoholic. And God played a trick on people like Governor Pritzker. He took a kid out of the trailer park and he gave him a little bit of brains and a big mouth, because I don't care. But you know what? I'm an idiot compared to the collective knowledge and wisdom of the people in this room. I'm an idiot. I don't know the answers. And if a politician wants to stand up and tell you, elect me, I know the answers, I'll lead the way, you run from them. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're DeSantis. I don't care if they're Trump. I don't care who they are. The only people that have the wisdom to keep us on the right path is you. And government won't tell you that. They won't tell you that because they want you to look to them and to rely upon them. That's what they want. All of them. Okay? So before I get to the guns, I have to lay that foundation. Let's go back to the spring of 2020. Spring of 2020. Your governor got on TV and said, I proclaim by executive decree that you can't leave your house unless you have an essential reason. You guys remember that? And guess who got to decide what was essential? Him. Well, his agency. You know what agency? Do you know what administrative agency in the state of Illinois made that decision? Anybody? Oh, that would have been too much common sense to be the health department. No, sir, it wasn't. It was the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. They made the decision of whether it was essential. Remember all the businesses? I proclaimeth you close by royal decree unless you're essential. And the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity decided who was essential. And it was Walmart, it was Lowe's, it was Home Depot, it was all of them. But guess what they have that the mom and pop shops didn't? Money! Lawyers lined up in droves. So your little shoe store that you'd had forever, you're not essential, but you sell all the shoes you want if you go to Walmart, right? Got to keep you safe. Keep you safe, right? Keep you safe from what? Who's going to keep us safe from them, right? But here's the scary thing. When the governor got on TV and did that, how many of you listened? Don't lie. I know most of you did. And that's okay. You're scared. You didn't know, right? Do you think fear is a new idea to control human beings? Fear? You think it's new? You think Governor Pritzker just came up with it and said, I'm going to scare these people into complying? You think that was a new idea? What did they scare us with before we became civilized? A sword. You didn't listen to a king, he'd kill you. Lock you up. Now we just have a different version of a sword because we're civilized. Your business license. Take your license away from you, right? Same impact, same effect, just different, more civilized way. And I asked this question in Rockford. I talked to 750 business owners. I said, how many of you business owners, before you closed your doors, when you lost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, called a lawyer, called a friend, called your priest, and said, you just got on TV and told me I got to do something. Is that how the law works? You know how many of them did something like that? How many do you think? Zero. None of them. They just complied. They just complied. You know how many businesses I represented back in 2021 when the coronavirus, the super spreader, was the mom and pop businesses? I represented 800 of them across 90-some counties. You know how many of them were ever closed by a court order for not complying with Governor Pritzker's royal decree? How many do you think? Zero. Guess how many times the governor tried? Who said that? What'd you say? Zero. It was all fear, you guys. It was all fear. And you know what? When he realized that the fear was wearing thin, guess what? The facts and science miraculously changed, and we didn't have to close your businesses anymore because all of my mitigations were so effective. It was a bunch of bull, you know what? It was all bull, you know what? He knew that the political capital had run thin, people had been pushed to the limit, and they said all of a sudden the facts and science, we don't need to close our small businesses anymore. Thank you for your sacrifice. That's what happened. Never closed a one. Never tried to close a one. And when I had those 800 clients, you know what I was giving them? Not Johnny Cochran legal advice. Courage. That's all they were getting from me. Open your doors. Well, Tom, what if somebody comes at... I said, quit talking. Open your doors. And all of them but 5 never heard a peep from anybody. Think about that, you guys. Think about that. Do you think now that our government, and again, when I talk government, I promise you, I've been a Republican my whole life. I believe in what its platform is. I don't believe in the politicians for the most part. I believe in the platform because freedom is on this side, liberty on this side is what it's about. That's what we're losing. And that's what people are getting courage. Just stand up. Stand up for yourself. Nothing happened. Then they got mad because they realized they'd been duped. Okay? Then what did we get to? Then what was next? Well, because the next year rolled around and it wasn't the small business owners anymore. Miraculously, the coronavirus was so novel that now the kids were the super spreaders. Our children. And every one of your school districts fell in line. Got to mask those babies. Because if they don't, everybody's going to die. All right? Who listened? Parents. For the most part, at the beginning. School boards, they listened. They wanted the COVID funds. All right? I was in a courtroom. This is an important message for you guys because it's going to play out when I get to the gun stuff. COVID. August of 2020. 5 months after the novel virus hit our shores. I stood in a courtroom in Springfield, Illinois. The governor's arguing he has the executive power to force your school districts to make your kids wear masks. You will find it nowhere in the law. It's not in there, guys, I promise you. But argued he was keeping you all safe from doom. And a judge in Sangamon County, Illinois, issued a court order that said governor's got the power to force your kids to wear a mask. Okay? And the governor said, oh, yeah, and if you don't listen to me, I'm going to take your funding away. How many of your school board members in here, you that have kids in school board members said, oh, they're going to take our funding away, right? How many times do you think they did that? 0. How many of you knew that I got a court order in Southern Illinois from a judge that said, State Board of Education, you don't have the power to take their funding away for not listening to that? How many of you knew that? Couple, right? But nonetheless, for that school year, everybody complied. Forced masks on those kids. My children were juniors in high school. Not so much to them. They're pretty resilient. But kids that grew up in backgrounds like I grew up in, who went to school to get away from abuse and away from a toxic environment, I saw it in their eyes. I saw the kids, the special needs children who couldn't learn because they had a piece of paper strapped over their face. I saw what it was doing to them emotionally. I saw what it was doing to them physically. I thought it was doing to their education. And guess what? We allowed it to happen. And now here we are, 2-3 years later, reading studies talking about what most of our parents knew was obvious. And you got people like J.B. Pritzker, that goober, going, oh, that report that's talking about all of this stuff. We didn't know that at the time. And it's like, yeah, you didn't know it at the time because your kids were in Florida doing whatever they wanted. But who allowed it to happen? We did. So I argued that in August of 20. Come around to the next school year, something was changing. You know what was changing? It wasn't my stellar increased legal talents. It was people that were changing. And you know who really was changing? It was moms sitting right there. They were changing because they were seeing the wear and tear on their children. And guess what? I was still ready to fight. But I knew that fight was bigger than a courtroom. It's bigger than that. Just like the gun case that I'm getting to, I promise. It's bigger than the courtroom. And in February of 2022, listen to this close. February of 2002, we're standing in a courtroom. Not just me and a couple of school districts, me and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of parents from across this state, with thousands and thousands of children from across this state, arguing in a courtroom that the governor doesn't have the power to force masks on kids with executive authority. That argument sound familiar? We argued that for 2 days. It was broadcast across the state, even though that turd Zuckerberg tried to shut us down. I think JB probably sent him an email. But we got it back up, argued it for 2 days. He doesn't have the power. And guess what? On February 4th, 2022, a judge in Sangamon County issued a ruling that ended up having statewide impact. Governor doesn't have the power to do it, and it's the evil that the law was intended to protect the people against. And masks were gone, and they never came back. Now, what's the message that I'm giving to you here? Guess what? August of 2020 to February of 2022. The same issue, the same facts, the same law. The law hadn't changed, you guys. But you know what else was the same? It was the same judge. I'm not criticizing the judge. I'm making a point. The same judge. Why? What was different? Facts? Who said that? What'd you say? The people were pissed. They didn't want any more. You couldn't fit another person in that courtroom. They were in another room, lined up. I don't know how many people were watching on television, but I guarantee it was in the tens of thousands. Because let me tell you all something. When tyranny comes to this nation, and it's coming, it's not here necessarily. These things we're dealing with are issues. It ain't tyranny, I promise you. I've read about tyranny. Which branch of government's going to save us from that tyranny? Which one? Who said that? None. Who's going to save us? People will save themselves, damn it. We'll save ourselves. And that's why the same judge issued a completely different ruling, because the people were awake and they were on fire. Okay? That is something you need to remember. Now guess what? We move on to the guns. The guns. You think the gun issue is really a whole lot different than these other issues we've been talking about? No. They're not. The same issue. Control. It's all about control. It's all about government thinking that they know what's best for the people and that the people don't know what's best for themselves. That's what it means. And then you've got people that disagree with us philosophically. That's true. Do you think, this is my opinion, but do you think the people that disagree with us philosophically are the majority? No. They're not. Why is their voice so loud? Media. What controls the media? Money. The liberal rich guys like Pritzker and Soros and all of them, they use their money to amplify a message to make it louder than it appears. I'm telling you it happens. So when you're sitting at home going, is there really that many people that believe that crap? The answer is no. But they amplify it. I watched J.B. Pritzker travel this state running for governor. His message and his following is very small. But he uses hundreds of millions of dollars to amplify it, to make it look like he's got a big following. And then he has a institutionally superior campaign structure with money to make sure that he ballot gathers and gets more votes than his competitor. That's why he wins elections. And then they get on TV and say, well, our message is superior, and that's why we win. It's bullshit, I'm telling you. They won those elections because they had more money to go out and use the laws that they created that are driven by money, early mail-in ballots. It's all about money. It's not about getting people to vote on election day now. It's going and getting their ballots before the election starts. That's how JB won. Okay? That's why they amplify their message. So in gun stuff, they amplify that anti-gun message to try to convince you that it's a majority of the people thinking that way, which it's not. The bigger issue in Illinois legislature, besides this gun bill, is the way of which they pass these laws. Okay? The shell bills, the procedural violations. And I am here to tell you with 100% certainty, they're more worried about that than they are this gun law. They know, in my opinion, that this law will never pass federal constitutional muster under the new Bruin standard from June 2023. I think Pritzker knows that, but he still had the bill passed anyway because he's building his national profile to run for president. Okay? I think he knows it doesn't pass. But what he didn't expect was for me to bring a state lawsuit at the beginning talking about the procedural violations of how we pass laws and the equal protection argument that we raise. He didn't see that coming. None of them did. And that's what got them sideways. They will fight at all costs to ever keep us from unwinding the way of which they pass laws in Illinois. Right? That's what they're really worried about. That's why they went and cut a deal with a Republican state representative out of Macon County to try to keep us from uncovering what they're trying to do in the lawmaking process. That's what they're trying to do. So we filed a lawsuit in the state court, the ones in the federal court that were just talked about. We have those arguments too, but there's tactics on how you do these things. And so ours started in the state court, and it argued two primary things. Procedurally, you're violating the Constitution of the state of Illinois and how you pass laws. And it is a general proposition, but we're using the gun law to expose that. Because guess what? A lot of people are pissed about the gun law. So I can get people's attention with, guess what? They don't do this with the gun law. They do it with the Safety Act. Y'all remember the Safety Act? They did the same thing with that law. Every budget that they pass, they do that. I've got somebody doing an analysis now. Every sensitive law in Illinois gets passed at 3 o'clock in the morning without following the Constitution. Okay? I've been talking to people about this for years of how do we deal with that. So then you've got equal protection, where they exempt 7 categories of people out of this new law. 7 categories of people. The legislative record doesn't talk about why they did that, but they said, oh, it's about training. One of the categories doesn't even need any training. It's interesting. Why do you think they exempt them out? Anybody know? Anybody know who the exempt categories are? Firearm or law enforcement, current retired, prison guards, mall cops, game wardens, or not game wardens, prison wardens, who I did an analysis of the prison wardens. There's 26 of them or 27 of them in Illinois. Only 13 of them have any firearms training at all. And of that firearms training, they're only trained with a 9mm handgun. But yet they're sufficiently trained in order to go buy all the AR-15s and 50 cal that you want. Is that rational to you? No, but they had to make something up when I filed an argument that they never saw coming, so the best they could come up with was training. So we got a temporary restraining order for our first set of clients, which were 800 some people in Effingham County. Restraining order was entered, and guess what? They immediately, at the flip of a switch, could go by and do whatever they wanted, right? And then that case went to the appellate court in the 5th Appellate District, down where I'm from, and the appellate court said 2 things. They said, 1, we absolutely know that the way that you're passing laws in Illinois is unconstitutional, but we can't fix that. Only the Supreme Court can fix that, which it's an accurate representation. And that 2, equal protection's been violated because what the hell's this law got to do with your training? If you're trained, if you can have a weapon, well, guess what? If training gives you the ability to retain that right, I'll take training. Take the training. I'm a certified firearms safety instructor for children in the state of Illinois. I teach kids firearm safety. I just did it last weekend. I guess I'm not trained enough. But because it was never about training, you guys, they had to make something up off the cuff and on the fly in one day. I gave them 1 day to come up with something. That's the best they could come up with. So the judges in the appellate court said, no, it doesn't work. It's unconstitutional because you're violating equal protection. But you know what the bigger issue was when they said it's unconstitutional for equal protection, but they said we can't do this with the procedural problems because that's not within we don't have the authority, only the Supreme Court does. You with me? That equal protection finding by the appellate court guaranteed me that I can argue the procedural violations in front of the Supreme Court of Illinois. I was guaranteed a shot at it. And I was going to hammer it because I sent discovery requests. I'm asking the Speaker of the House questions under oath, the President of the Senate under oath. You answer these questions, and they are scared to death. to answer those questions, because they're going to have to admit, likely, that they knowingly violating the Constitution of the state of Illinois. Because they certify each law before it goes to the governor to sign that it's complied with constitutional requirements. They're signing those bills under oath, knowing that they do not. And then they try to tell the court there's nothing you can do about it. The lower court. It's true. But you know who can do something about it? Supreme Court. But you have to get to the Supreme Court. And we were going to get there, guaranteed, because the equal protection had been found. So what's the governor do to try to stop that? Because he's scared to death. He runs to Macon County, because I have 4 cases now. We have almost 7,000 people in the state of Illinois that are covered under this restraining order that can buy whatever they want. 188 FFLs, okay? And we're still doing our discovery. So how does the governor try to get around this? Because he does not want to answer our discovery. Not so much the governor, the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate. They have to admit unconstitutional conduct. So what do? They run to the Macon County case, where there's a politician down in my part of the world who took our documents that we had used for our clients, copied and pasted them, and filed his own lawsuit. That's what he did. You guys, anybody here know about this? Anybody? Yeah. Filed his own lawsuit. But again, he didn't create anything new. He just completely replicated what we had done for our clients. Got a ruling out of that judge that had to follow the appellate court ruling that I told you about. That judge had to follow that. He didn't have a choice. And run to the Supreme Court. Wants to be there first, make a name for himself. But he didn't do any of the work to complete the analysis, to make them answer these questions under oath. You with me? To really nail it down. When you're going to go to the Supreme Court of Illinois saying a law is unconstitutional, you want to take your best case there. You don't want to go there with a gun half loaded, right? And that's what it did, because they wanted to be first. But you know what they didn't take with them, with the equal protection? They didn't take the procedural violations along with it for the ride. That's what the governor wanted, because the governor wants to try to run out and get a ruling in that case on the equal protection, and then try to stop our cases from proceeding, because our cases would uncover some very serious problems, which is how they control Illinois politics. That was a bigger issue, okay? So for the gun issue that we're dealing with, we've still, just in a vacuum, we've still got the federal cases, which again, I'm confident that we're going to be successful there. It's going to take more time. The state court cases, we still got some shots, but it's been hindered some because of a politician that should stick with politics, okay? That's sad, but it's true, and we're doing everything we can to stop it. So in the meantime, our cases are still proceeding. Right? We're going to keep asking for discovery. They're trying to ask the judge to, don't make us answer these questions until we see what happens in the Macon County case, right? They're trying to stall and delay because they don't want to sign out under oath that they're violating your Constitution. They don't want to admit it. Even though I know it's true and they know it's true, to sign a document where you swear in writing that it's true, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And that's what they're trying to stop. And that's what we're working on. So I'll continue to work on it. In the meantime, while we're still fighting, we still have, over 7,000 people that can exercise their rights, because you have to be individually named in the state of Illinois. If they get an injunction in the federal court, that could have statewide implication, because the jurisdiction of a federal court is different than the jurisdiction of a state court. So that could have statewide implication. In the state court cases like the ones we filed, the ability to stop the law from applying has to be to people that are individually named. That's the difference. When people say, well, why can't you get a statewide injunction in a state court, Tom? You can, but the chances are very small, and it's just not procedurally beneficial to try to get to a resolution that ultimately finds the law unconstitutional. So that's the long version of that, you guys. That's where it's at. But in a nutshell, next year it's going to be something else. Is it going to be a gun issue? I don't know what's going to be. Might be, furries in the bathrooms and having, litter boxes in the bathrooms, or your children being taught stuff that we can't. If I started talking here about the things that they're trying to teach children in school, you would all would look at me and say, Tom, you're being vulgar, and we don't appreciate that, right? Now they want to teach your children. Those fights are not going to end. They're not going to end if they know that people might sit and complain, but they're really not going to fight. So I encourage each and every one of you, find your way to fight, whatever talents God gave you, whatever ability you can. Because if you think coming here having a meal, listening to me and this gentleman talk, and then going home and complaining to your wife or your boyfriend or girlfriend about the things that we've talked about, but then going back to living your comfortable life, because this is America. I've spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe. That's where my children's mother's from. I've seen real suffering. We have suffering here, but for the most part, it's not us. We all have our own problems, but it's going to get worse. So find a way to participate. If you run for office, communicate with people, find friends that don't agree with you, and find common ground. And if you let your government know that you're here, it can make a difference. Because J.B. Pritzker doesn't care about me. I'm one man. He didn't care. But if I'm talking for 50,000 people, or 100,000, or 200, it makes a difference. So God bless you guys, and I'll answer any questions you want.